Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Brilliant. So yeah, thank you so much, Blanca, Stephen and Sue. Some really insightful sessions there as well. You can't not go into a room these days, see a VR headset or Lego and not have a smile on your face, can you? Because it's something we all love to play with and a fantastic way to engage. So yeah, big thank you to John and Steve today for stepping in for Phil. It's my first time on the other side of the camera, as it were, so I'm very grateful to be here. And I'm here to discuss Zoom Gloom and Team Screams, and that's a sort of semi-nod to the upcoming Halloween holiday, but it's also an indication of what can be quite a sort of negative experience within the Zoom and Teams environment. That's not to belittle any of the work that we do within these spaces. I'm a big fan of both of them. You know, they've got us through the pandemic in the sense that they've put educators in homes around the world. They've kept us in touch with family, even when we don't want to be sometimes at times. But yeah, they're great for what they are. But actually, I'm looking at engaging students in alternative online spaces. So I've posted the poll, so thank you for anyone that's been able to sort of post feedback to that. You can take part now if you've missed the link by scanning the QR code or clicking on that link in the chat. But the reason I'm asking for the sort of barriers to student engagement when using Teams or Zoom is because I'm just looking to consider what it is that's impacting us. And hopefully we've come up with some similar ideas and what it is that's restricting students from engaging in these spaces. So it's great to see some of your answers coming through. So getting students to answer, you know, generally show they're there. What we can often find in these spaces is that we're sort of talking out into the abyss. You know, there's a blank wall of names. If we're lucky with a sort of picture, it's hard to get the cameras on. We don't always want to get the cameras on, but for whatever reason, they can be off. But it's just that fact of engaging with people, you know, when we don't know who they are. You do feel like you're talking to yourself. You feel like you can't really get students to talk to each other because it's often one voice in the room, you know, in that sense that they can't talk to each other and have breakout conversations. The breakout rooms themselves, as you're all aware, are sort of pretty clunky. You know, you get sent out to the middle of nowhere. You get a few minutes to discuss in a group, which is quite uncomfortable, and then you're dragged back in. And if you want to facilitate those sessions, often you have to sort of jump in and intrude. And yeah, so what I'm looking at today is really, how can we look for better engagement in online spaces? What spaces support that engagement? And is it time to move on from Teams and Zoom? So talking of online engagement, I think it's really important. These sort of themes are drawn from research and literature and reports. And actually that idea of student identity and participation, you know, we want students to feel that they're comfortable in themselves, that they can speak out and participate and interact with each other. And part of that interaction and confidence comes through communication in the sense of being able to talk through camera, through text, through emoji, whatever it is that suits their sort of preference at the time. And once we've got students talking and communicating, we want to see their creativity. You know, we want to enable them to show their expression, their understanding, their context. And that creativity comes out even more through the sort of collaboration that we can enable. And that can be through group work, project work, you know, interdisciplinary collaboration, whatever form it takes. It really sort of ignites that student desire to learn and supports our learning outcomes. So underpinning all of that is an accessible and inclusivity, and that's making sure that students feel a part of learning. You know, we want them to feel a part of the group, a part of themselves. We want them to understand what's being presented. We want them to be able to access what's being presented, and we don't want to feel anyone to feel excluded. So I feel like the accessibility and inclusivity is a sort of a key fundamental part of online engagement. And then autonomy, this idea that students actually can decide for themselves what they want to learn and how they learn, and, you know, which way they're going to go, who they're going to engage with. And as we've seen, Teams and Zoom doesn't really give you that direction. It doesn't give that freedom. It's quite a passive environment. It's quite a static environment. And we're looking for something that's a bit better than that. So tying this into the sort of recent reports, the one key report in building belonging, we want students to belong. They've identified connection, inclusion, support and autonomy leading to belonging and engagement. And then the ALT survey last year identified that student engagement really is driving the use of learning technology, and that actually the top 10 tools you'll see indicate a shift in practice beyond Teams and Zoom towards collaboration. So this all sounds well and good. Where can we do this beyond Teams and Zoom? And the bottom line is, what's it going to cost us? Well, what we've been using in Liverpool is a virtual space, and a virtual space sits in between the sort of idea of a virtual meeting, which we're in right now, where we have the basic communication elements, and then what we've just seen from Blanca and Stephen, which is a fantastic immersive world. It's the sort of 3D environments engaged with through headsets. Could be metaverse, that's up there as well, Second Life, Minecraft. I feel like the virtual spaces sit in the middle of these, and you may have heard of a few of them. So Spatial chat's one that we've used at the institution, and I'll show you that shortly. There's also GatherTown, Kumo Space, spaces that are similar to that in that they are sort of customizable 2D environments whereby we don't need the tech to go with it, and they're a little bit more accessible, a little bit more affordable. So I'm just going to talk you through the sort of spatial chat example that we've used at the University of Liverpool. Sip of water because I'm talking fast. So spatial chat. Let me give you an introduction to this. So this is one of the sort of classrooms, and what spatial chat is, it's a 2D learning environment, very customizable. You can upload any background or use their templates. The term spatial chat comes from this sort of area here where you'll see this bubble. That's indicative of my volume of audio. So anyone over here can't hear beyond this space. I can drag my avatar around the screen, so I can visit different areas. And this is me as a facilitator. If I were to have students in this space, I could ask them to take a seat by dragging and dropping their avatar to where they want to go. And this gives us that idea of being able to move about and navigate at their freedom. The customization means we can sort of create these backgrounds as we want. So we can design the learning environment to support the purpose. And then we can support that with accessibility functions like third-party tools that enable captions, active learning elements such as polls, and asynchronous resources. So that links to our on-demand Canvas course. And this is just one example of one of the rooms. Each of these spaces can host up to sort of from 50 to 500 people. Within the breakout space, you're limited to 50. So we ran a conference last year, which was Islands of Innovation. And Sue, it was great to have you on the team there as well, who's just presented. I think she'll vouch for the success of that project. And this was one of our sort of areas. So each of these dots is a person, and each of the people can move wherever they want within the space. You can add sort of elements to it, and I'll show you that in a second. But it's just that freedom of moving around within the learning environment that you don't get within the Teams and Zoom equivalent. And that enables interaction between participants and between peers. So really, if these people here were talking, these people here wouldn't hear. So they could have a conversation. And as a facilitator, what that means is I can sort of send people to different areas of the room for breakout discussions and then talk to them all at once. And it supports a whole host of the idea of communication identity. So it enables students to add a bit more than just their initials. They can add a little bit about their context, who they are, where they're from. They can also be anonymous, which is quite important because you might want that sort of anonymous contribution and discussion. If you're talking about subjects that perhaps you don't want people to reveal who they are, they can then, they have something to hide behind and talk about where they're comfortable. It can be through text, chat, video, audio, any of the sort of usual functions of Teams and Zoom, but in a different environment. This background here, again, it's a sort of customized template that they've added on the platform. You can have a presentation here through a shared screen. And for us, the exciting thing is just that interaction, that collaboration, the creativity. We're bringing all those elements together to make a session involving and engaging. So in this sense, we've got a third-party tool embedded, which is Padlet. You can have Miro, Mural, any of the sort of tools you're familiar with that enable an embed option can be added to anywhere in the screen through this button here. And then students can interact with that directly. In this sense, we've set a timer up. We've given each group the chance to present, and then they return to their relevant boat as we've themed it. And that way they can sort of engage with each other. They can engage with the content, all within a sort of 3D or 2D navigatable environment. We've enjoyed using it through various forms of embedding different resources. So again, in this space, students can interact with the content that's there. We've got a PDF here that can be navigated. This is all simultaneous, and anyone in that meeting space can share their own content. So we're bringing in a range of interactive content for students to engage with. They can then bring in their own, source of information to share with the group, which can then be discussed as well, commented on. You can draw and annotate screens. And we've just found it brings together this whole, immersive environment that we're not getting in these sort of static Teams and Zoom situations. Underpinning all of that is an accessibility consideration. So captions captions and transcripts if required, alternative formats of text and video and whatever else is there. So if you've got a PDF, you can make sure it's accessible to support a video. It can be overwhelming, these spaces, so we recommend a sort of structured introduction. Salmon's sort of 5 steps to activities, bringing in students, but getting them confident in the digital environment before putting them in front of any sort of real testing setup. And at Liverpool, we're running it through a series of events in a pilot project over the next year. So we're going to try and deliver it within curriculum, extra and co-curricular activities. This is going to be through lectures, seminars, workshops. I love the idea of the role playing, the simulation, so we can build medical environments, perhaps if you want to get them used to engaging with patients together and with a facilitator on hand. All of this, of course, within the online context. And the collaboration also brings together people from different parts of the institution and externally. You don't need to log in to use the spatial chat platform. It's just a simple link that you can access by clicking onto it. And as I said, this came from the Islands of Innovation Festival, which was, we did it across 3 time zones. We ran it 3 times within one day, which on reflection probably was a little bit much. We're still going at 6 o'clock when you started at 8 in the morning and you're running online sessions. I think next year when we rerun it, we'll stagger it across 3 days. But that idea of bringing people from across the world for inclusivity was something that made sure it was a success. And we've got much more information on that if you'd like it. Just a bit of feedback from the actual pilot conference, which then led to us looking into this platform and then using it. Obviously, people like being introduced to it. They'd recommend it to academics. The idea of connecting with people, that idea of sort of belonging and engaging with each other in ways that's a bit more organic than teams, that's something that really got people interested. And then just bring your attention to the bottom. So no matter how much you try, as is the online case, there will always be quiet groups. There will always be quiet people. And I think that's just part of the challenge of engaging online, isn't it? It's how do we get to the quiet people? Well, we'll just keep trying. We'll keep putting activities in, trying to build their confidence and trying to include them in group activities. So if you're interested in this sort of thing and you'd like to try it for yourself, I've just sort of gathered the free versions and I'll send a link to all of these. So Spatial Chat's the one we recommend that we've been using. Wonder's similar. It requires you to be able to drag and drop your avatar rather than move with a cursor, which is Kumo, Gather, and I believe Topia. Though, as you can see, you can have more students within those spaces for free. So these are all completely free to try out. You know, if it's something that you think, oh, this could be quite nice, then you could look at perhaps scaling that up with a bit of funding. They're not generally free because they tend to target remote workplaces. So actually seeing them coming into an educational context is, I think it's going to be beneficial for them and us as we sort of expand their functions. So just some basic research that's gone into today's presentation and looking into these works. Again, I'll circulate the slides, but I think that brings me to the end of that. And so, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Absolutely great. Thank you, Rob. I wish I could have seen the audience's face when you said one of your events went on from 8 till 6. I think that would have been a moment.
Well, it felt like a day of, I think by the end I was ready for the pub, but it was a great day. And I think Sue was there, as I say, she enjoyed it. We had a lot of people from around the world attend. One of the main takeaways from that was there didn't seem to be many technical problems. It was quite an intuitive space. So we were there to support students. We made sure that there was an icebreaker activity, an induction activity, all important in developing these new spaces. But it worked really well. And the feedback, as we've said, it's led us to this pilot, which is leading us to try and develop further resources within it.
Great. A few people have asked about how you deal with unwelcome behaviour. Did you have any on that day, an actual example that you used, or is it all covered by filters and things?
So you, as a facilitator, first of all, you have control for password rooms, so you can protect rooms. So if you wanted to send breakout groups, you could make sure they were protected spaces. You also can remove users. So it's similar to any online space. I think if you have a sort of, a code of ethics or, an accepted classroom guidelines, as long as people are following that, then yeah, it's the same. It's classroom management really, but you are able to, boot people out if you have to in the worst instance.
Okay, and similarly around accessibility, somebody mentioned with ADHD, they would expect it to be quite overwhelming. Do you have any guidance for people with particular worries, or any way you can structure it more for them? If it looks like a big open space, do you have a way to guide people through that?
Yeah, so as I say, each background's completely customizable. So all it is really is a 1920 by 1080 image, which you can upload. So I would just factor that into the design of the space. So perhaps make it as simple as possible, take away the colors, take away the distractions, support them as they need. If you know what their sort of support requirements are, you can help, but also designing these spaces ahead for, universal design so that it won't be overwhelming, perhaps leading people into more complex parts of the activities with a few sort of icebreakers and things, so you can see, are you comfortable and can we support you?
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. There are more questions, but again, I'm going to have to move on. If you scan through the chat, you'll see there's a lot of very good feedback, as well as the same usual kind of worries and concerns and lots of interest. So thank you very much. That's a really good overview.
Thanks, everyone.
And good luck with it.